Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink, episode 5. Joe Smith here, bringing you all the insider info on your Minnesota Wild and Gophers hockey. Joe, how are we doing?
Doing great. Enjoying some California weather here. It's been great. We have a 10K race on Saturday, and my training run here was nice in 70s versus it's 16 degrees in Minneapolis on Saturday. So I hope I can bottle that one up for our run on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, who's got the better weather right now, you or Russo out in Florida?
That's a tough one. This is still like light jacket weather in some ways. It's a little like spring or fall, so I like that element of it as somebody who's lived in Florida for a long time to have the oppressive heat. But yeah, I'm sure he's not complaining. I'm not complaining. So I'll take either one.
Yeah, it works out nicely that like one of you isn't in Winnipeg right now while the other's in Florida. That'd be a little bit tougher.
One of us will be more cranky at that particular point. And we've had a few of those trips, right? But end of the season now, it's spring.
Both on the move, right? Like usually one of you is just staying put and the other one's out. Like here, it's like, oh, I get to go to the GM meetings in Florida. You go have fun up in Edmonton.
Yeah, or like when I was in New Zealand for a part of like the before and after the bye week, right? So that helped, or like when I'm on the trips and maybe Mike goes to Vegas for a few days or whatever, see his family. So that's the benefit of having both of us. But there are times where we're both the same place at the same time, believe it or not. So we're both at all the games in Minnesota. So at least we're not ships passing in the wind there.
Breaking the conspiracy. No one had ever seen you guys in the same room before.
It's magic.
Man, anything juicy that Mike's thrown out for things that are topical for the GM meetings?
Well, I mean, I think one of the interesting nuggets that came out, so far is that the league has got a deal with Amazon to do kind of a behind the scenes series with, 10 to 12 of the top players in the league, right? Which we all have said for years that the league needs to do a better job of marketing their top players and showcasing them and growing the game in that way. And so this would be, phenomenal, I think for any fan, right? I think there's already been like people on Twitter saying who should it be or who the players will be on that one. So if you had to pick a Wild player to be on that on the 12, who would you pick?
For me, I mean, it's tough because I think the easy answer is everyone would love to have Jake Middleton as far as the personality, but I don't know if the NHL is going to go that kind of direction. It's going to be interesting because you saw with what the NFL did with quarterbacks, which we came right off of that, and we thought it'd be great if they just did a series called Goalies. That could be real interesting, and I think Marc-Andre Fleury certainly could fit the bill if he's going to be back for another season. But you got to think they're going to go more for star power, and I wonder too how much they're going to evaluate player versus like market. Like, oh, we got to hit all the Canadian teams. We got to hit the original 6. Like, make sure you're getting those big audience draws. But I would think Middleton would be the most fun. I think an interesting one, though, with kind of what he's done here and the tie with Kaprizov, of course, I think Mats Zuccarello could be a really interesting one.
And the only question would be, would he be up for it? Right.
That's the real question.
you like, I think you have to find the right balance between the star power and personality and a player who would buy in, right? Like Kirk Cousins was phenomenal on the quarterback because he went all in and made jokes about himself and the Coles outfits and stuff like that. And you got to see the real him. And like people got to know what they thought was the real him, before he left Minnesota for $1 billion. But I think you have to find the right balance, right? Like, I don't know if Jake Middleton would sell, but I think it'd be hella interesting. I don't know what the average hockey fan would just be like, let's do what Jake Middleton has to do, but he'd be probably the most fun.
But on the flip side, for quarterbacks, right, they had Patrick Mahomes, top name. They had Kirk Cousins, which is like kind of in the middle, and he's kind of more of a polarizing name. Like Vikings fans will either tell you he's an elite quarterback or that he's absolute trash. There's not much middle ground. And then they had Marcus Mariota, who was kind of more the up-and-comer, like trying to rejuvenate his career. Like, if there's going to be 12-ish guys, you probably could have 2 or 3 that are there way more for the personality. You can have like 5 or so that are there purely for the star power, and then another chunk that cater to specific markets. Like, I could see it working with that many. Now, if there was just one guy, no, Middleton's probably not going to be that guy.
No, but like, I mean, I love his commercials he does for like the Wild website, right? And like he has fun with it. And I love to do, like, they had a story about him riding his motorcycle to the rink or whatever. I think people love to see that footage, but people like Lightning fans want to see Kucherov, and I don't know if he'd be up for that.
No
he barely
chance.
likes to do media, but he would be just a fascinating dude. So I don't know. I think that's something that aside from like talking about overtime and everything else at those meetings, that's kind of a fun nugget to come out of it, where I think fans can get an inside look at some of the top. I'm sure Austin Matthews will be part of it. I'm sure they'll try to get McDavid. I'm sure they'll try to get some of these other guys, or Matthew Tkachuk might be on it. I can see.
I think
Marchessault with Vegas.
And I would think even if it's not Austin Matthews, like some combination of Matthews and Nylander, like those two are just polarizing individuals.
Yeah, I mean, let's go at the home run ask, right? Should go for broke and get everybody, and then if not, then you kind of have your second tier of asks of like, this would be intriguing, this would be a good foil. You never want to not ask for those top guys and then to get shut down. But there's plenty of personalities in this league that people don't have any awareness of because they're just not showcased enough. So I'm excited to see if you're a hockey fan, this would be kind of a cool project.
Yeah, very much support it. Let's get into the rundown then. So we got news and notes, Gophers and Minnesota Wild, plenty to talk about there. Interview today is with Adam Beckman, who we'll be talking about a little bit here as well. Then our first iteration of Keyboard Warriors, and signing off, of course, with the most important things you guys need to be reading here coming up for The Athletic. Joe, let's just start though. Gophers, they lose a tough one to Michigan. I'm sure you aren't allowed to have an opinion, but you're a Michigan guy. You like having that one over me. And Gophers now sit weirdly at 8 in the pairwise, with 9 and 10 being Wisconsin and Michigan. I don't think anyone foresaw that being the case, but it's shaping up to be a really interesting tournament that might be put together here, where I've actually seen some early bracket predictions. The Sioux Falls containing North Dakota, Bemidji, Omaha, and Minnesota, which I'm probably driving out there and buying my tickets immediately if that's actually how it stacks up.
You see a lot of people like Field of Dreams, like the cars and the lights on the highways going to Sioux Falls if like that was legitimately happen. I mean, hey, I would like to go out there too to see if that was a possibility, because first of all, like just having the atmosphere of that rink there. I've never been, but I've heard really good things. So, and then having Minnesota underdog kind of in the tournament, and it's at the end of the world that they lost to Michigan. They didn't win didn't win the whole tournament. Like they have a chance in a couple of weeks of practice to reset and regroup, and the real tournament for them kind of starts in a few weeks here. So I don't think obviously they'd rather win. They don't want to lose. They don't want to lose to Michigan again another year. But I think overall is preparing themselves and learning from it and knowing what they need to do to make a run here in the tournament and get to St. Paul for the Frozen Four.
Yeah, and it's more. It would have been nice to have firmly locked up a 2 seed and maybe even had an outside shot at a 1. But you're right. Like at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal. But yes, shout out. Thank you, Max Veach, Bulldog insider and bracketologist. Apparently, I'd be so happy if that happened. Minnesota Wild, there's a lot going on. Obviously, we're in the thick of it, where we still haven't really decided if they're a playoff team or not. We talked about the stretch last episode, though, of Arizona, Anaheim, St. Louis, Anaheim, LA, St. Louis, San Jose. We got a win in Arizona, win in Anaheim. Both looked solid. St. Louis, interesting game with how everything broke down. Bigger takeaway for you, being out there for the games, that they were just clearly out-competed early on in a do-or-die type game, or the resilience they actually showed in fighting back to force a shootout? Like, where do you see, are they kicking themselves, or are they riding the comeback vibes and coming in strong for this back-to-back in California?
Well, I think they were kicking themselves a bit there. I mean, I think at this point where they can barely afford to lose any points at this juncture down the stretch. Like, to know how big that game was, to having learned a lesson from 2 weeks ago when they lost in St. Louis and Nashville, back-to-back games. It was disappointing, I think, for a lot of the guys. But I mean, obviously they got a point. But the team they were chasing them at 2 in St. Louis, and St. Louis is now ahead of them in the standings after another win the other night. So, I think the bigger picture concern is like the record against some of the better teams in the Central Division. I think it's like 3-10-2 against Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, Nashville, and St. Louis. Like, a couple wins over Nashville, one over St. Louis. Like, that's where you, at the end of the season, you look back and see that they missed the playoff because they couldn't get points against those teams, and those teams are the ones that were ahead of them in these playoffs. They probably have 4 of those teams in the playoffs. So, clearly, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence that they make the playoffs. But they'll play some of those teams, right? So that's where this stretch is important. They have to take care of business against the Ducks, and then obviously the Kings, who are right there too, in a tough back-to-back. And St. Louis on Saturday, that's like obviously in a month full of must-win games. That is absolutely got to have no chance that you can't have that game at home on Saturday, going into a long break before the schedule kicks in again. But I think we're trying to incorporate some of our Lord of the Rings quotes in these episodes and broadcasts that kind of fit where our teams are, that kind of we follow and we cover. This one, I think, is pretty fitting for the Wild and their playoff hopes. Hope is never mere, even when it is meager. And I think that could very well speak to the Wild, because there's still hope. It's not like their percentage chances are like 15%, I think, by their latest odds to make the playoffs, but there's still 14 games left in the season, and they play a lot of these guys that they are chasing. They play LA, they play Vegas twice, they play St. Louis again. Like, they control their own destiny in those situations to get back into it. So every time you think that they're completely done, like, they're still, and the fact that they have this chance after all that's gone on this year, the horrible start and fired Dean Evison, like the injuries, like spurging out most of the season. You lost Brodin for a while, like, the lineup that you have to trot out there sometimes, and to be able to be in a playoff picture. I think we'll get into this in another podcast, but I think it shows how well that John Hines has done with this group and have them playing meaningful hockey and the culture that they're trying to build there, competitiveness, and doing a lot with, sometimes a depleted lineup. So, I think hope is mere, but not meager at this point. There's still a chance, but this week will be telling again.
Yeah, and to that point, I gotta ask, because this is one that, of course, Jeff Merrick keeps on pushing with his unique perspective. But the Wild, right? Some of this does not fall in their hands. There's a little bit of hoping that other teams help them out in beating the teams they're chasing. But in a game like we have here off the back-to-back, LA Kings, who's definitely the team that you're probably eyeing as the most likely team for you to catch, I still think that, I don't know, I think that they're more catchable than Vegas, even though they've had their struggles of late. Mm-hmm. Can you see a world where John Hines, after pulling the goalie in overtime with success against LA, you can't yield a point to them? Do you see a scenario tied in the third period where John Hines pulls the goalie there to try and ice the game in regulation?
That's a tough one. I guess like both risk getting 0 points, right? Overtime, in that situation. I think maybe as of like Wednesday's game, like that'd be a tough one to pull right at that particular point, just because they're so close and you want to give yourself every chance. But I think it's the kind of the flow of the game, right? If you're not generating much and you're kind of just like, if the team's not going as well and you're like, clearly you're not pushing, then maybe try to do that. But I think those moves are very few and far between. They won't be like a regular thing if you kind of catch teams by surprise. But I think it's more important right now is like the goaltending they get the next 2 games, and who do you start when? Do you start Gustavsson against the Ducks, the theoretical weaker team, or do you go with Fleury, who's been hot, get that win against the Ducks, and then believe and trust that Gustavsson will have his A game in a back-to-back where it's a difficult situation, guys playing in front of them against the better team? And that's a tough call, I think, for John Hines.
Well, I got to think that half of the equation needs to be which one's going to mess with Cam Talbot more, the guy that got brought in to replace him or the guy that basically kicked him to the curb and made him irrelevant. I don't know. But tell me, does the net just belong to Marc-Andre Fleury now?
Well, I think he's been given the net the last week or so, the number 3 star of the week, I believe, by the NHL. And he's earned it, right? It wasn't like he was just a token gift. He was earned. And Gustavsson told me the other day, he's like, this is how it should be. This is how a healthy goalie tandem is. If you ride the hot goalie and then let him play until he's not anymore. And so he definitely gets it. But I think, they're going to need both guys to play. They have a lot of back-to-backs and they have been scheduled on the stretch. Like, they can't just play 39-year-old Marc-Andre Fleury the last 14 games, right? You need Gustavsson, and this is where, like Heinz said, he had a great game in Colorado, really good. But for him, it's consistency. They need to be able to trust him that a game after that, can he do it again? And, we talked to Gustavsson today after practice in Anaheim, he said, I'm the same guy as I was last year, and same hockey-wise. Just all about it's mentally, it's been the challenge for him as far as like the confidence and like keeping that consistency, and because everything, like all of his like technique and everything hasn't changed. It's more so kind of, it's been tough for him to get back into a rhythm, I think, since the midseason injury when he was really one of the hottest goalies in the league. He got injured at Winnipeg, and then really it's been up and down ever since. So we'll see, but I think he's jumping at the bit to get a chance to get back in there. And hey, if he has a good game, a great game, one of these two, then all of a sudden you can start getting back into, splitting more of the time. But the fact that Fleury's been playing so well really kind of helps lift them into this, pulls them into this playoff contention.
A little bit of an abstract hypothetical here, but if Marc-Andre Fleury, for all argument's sake, maintains the production that he's shown, is there anything that Gustavsson can do to potentially be, if we're going to go with that 15%, is there anything he could do to get the starter's crease at the start of the playoffs? Again, assuming Fleury does not fall off.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they make the playoffs, both of those goalies will be playing well, so it'll be a tougher decision, right? If they end up somehow sneaking in, it's because both of those goalies, that means Gustavsson would have found his game and he'd be on a roll. So, is there ever a year where they don't have a tough goalie decision? It's like last year was controversial when they didn't go to Gus game 2. The year before that, we've all covered that many times with Talbot and Fleury and stuff. So, I think that's this difficult decision that John Hines hopes he has in about 3 or 4 weeks. Because if they do get in playoff contention, that means that Gustavsson will have won several big games here. And at that point, you go based upon who's been the best recently and the best matchup, right? Who's better matchup against the Dallas Stars or Vancouver or whatever else. You kind of go based on that and then roll from there.
Fair. Marat Khusnutdinov, quite possibly the greatest at the faceoff dot that the Minnesota Wild have ever seen. What have you seen from him 2 games in?
That was funny after his debut, and he heard all the big cheers after back-to-back faceoff wins. It's like, oh, cool, thanks, guys. Like, you didn't get that in the KHL, but it just kind of shows you how appreciative Wild fans are for someone who can win faceoffs, which has been a struggle for quite a while. But no, I think he's not going to blow you away as far as like scoring 40 goals, but he is a really smart player. He's tenacious on the forecheck. You'll eventually see him in the penalty kill. He did some reps today in practice to start working on that. I think he'd be a really good penalty killer because of A, he can win faceoffs. B, he has a great stick. C, he's just kind of smart and kind of see the passing lane. So he'll be a good weapon in that particular special teams at some point. But like he doesn't. I think so far, considering the circumstances, and if you'd have been told when he signed like a few weeks ago that he'd be playing third line and fitting in and playing well, that's all you could really ask for, right? So he'd only continue to grow and get better. And I am curious how he enjoyed his first NHL road trip travel, because it's quite. I'm sure it's quite. I mean, I know they probably travel okay in the KHL, but this is flying to California, staying at a nice resort on Sunday, like Clipper looking the beach. Like, this got to be a pretty eye-opening experience for him. His first taste of the NHL.
Yeah, that is true. And you'd think, as we record this early evening on Monday, you'd think that the sun would have done Mike some good, but back to his bag in going after some of the fans for their interesting takes on some of the things that he said. A lot of them coming at him, and a lot of the, at least, replies I saw from Russo about people wanting Khusnutdinov to get a real chance and put him on the first line. I'll yield to you and let you just talk about the reality of that situation.
Didn't we hear that a lot with Marco Rossi too? I think, right?
Rossi's a little different though, because he was at least like a top third of the draft, top third of the first round pick. Or Khusnutdinov somewhere in the second, and different player profile. But yes, we did.
But yeah, like, I mean, he's playing in the third/second line minutes for a team trying to play for a playoff spot. I don't. You lose Eriksson Ek as a top line center. Like, he's very, very difficult to replace, even with Ryan Hartman, who I think can do a good job there. He's played with Kirill and Zuki before. He knows how to play with top players. So I think that's a lot to throw at a guy like 4 games into his NHL career. If you go to top line, like, the only line that's really been producing for you, and let's make something happen, right?
Yeah.
Also, you get to play against other teams' top lines too if you go in that situation too. So he's not buried in the fourth line playing 7 minutes a game. Like, he's getting an opportunity, and he'll play second power play. He's going to play the penalty kill at some point. So I think they're just trying to make sure that they don't overload him. And, you want to build guys up for success where they get their confidence playing well and being able to adjust on the fly. So I don't think they want to just throw him in that situation right away. And then what if it doesn't work out? He gets moved back to the third line. Like, how do you, and what do the fans say? Oh, he got kicked off the first line, he's back to the third line again. Like, must be a negative thing, So
yeah,
I'll let Russo handle that discourse, and I'll stay out of it.
Yes, that's best. And you nailed my biggest concern though, right? He is not getting buried in playing fourth line minutes. He's actually playing, and I will side with Russo here. I think he said it pretty well. Khusnutdinov does not profile as a first line center. He is very much, with his skill set and what he brings, a guy that you expect to be middle six long term. Now, the excitement of playing him with Kaprizov for a game, like, sure, sign me up. I'm open to it. But I think we can calm down on just expecting every new player that comes in to get a shot on the first line. Like, let's just take it easy.
Happened with Beckman, happened with Walker, like, all this stuff. Like, a lot of these guys that get called up have to learn to play a different role, right? There's only 3 guys that can play on the top line. I know all these guys play top line for the WHL or for whatever, or the Gophers, but there's only 3 spots there. And the guys that are there are A, the superstar, B, a budding star, like in Matt Boldy. And then, of course, now Ryan Hartman, who has scored 34 goals in the National Hockey League and has played in that situation before. So and that's, of all the concerns for the team, that is not high on the worry meter so far.
Well, talk about Adam Beckman here. Right before we turn it over to our interview with him, this is a guy that it sounds like, as of now, there's a chance that he's going to be playing for part of this California stretch, but he's been up and down, we've heard, he's getting his chance now, and he just sat in the press box for that entire stretch. Fans are maybe a little overprotective of him, but also, like, they've got some valid points. What are you seeing or hearing about just Adam Beckman, both in the short term, and is this a guy we expect to be here after this summer?
Yeah, I asked John Hines about him today, because I'm like, he sat for a while. Like, is that tough for a prospect to kind of come in and make a big impression and playing in one game and then sitting? And he's like, he told Beckman after Khusnutdinov came, he's like, hey, I'm pulling you from the lineup, but it's not because something you did wrong in your game. We want to get a look at this kid and see him play. And obviously he's earned some subsequent games in the lineup. And he said that Beckman should have confidence in his game. The games he played before that, like, he was making good decisions with the puck. He was playing with speed, which he absolutely needs to do to survive in this league. And so I think he's felt a little more encouraged with that. I think the key for Beckman will be A, consistency, and B, production. They need to see some production from him, right? Like he didn't profile as like a fourth line winger, like, in the draft, right? Like, I don't think he's going to play top 6, in the next couple of games, but I think he has it in him to to score goals and produce and be somebody that can kind of chip in on a team that needs secondary scoring. So, but watching the Wild recently, like not like Lucchini or Lettieri was like giving a bunch of offense. So like, why not give Beckman a chance to go in there, use his speed. He plays well defensively, better than he did before. He could learn a lot in that ways. So, the key for him is to not go into that game and think it's like his Stanley Cup final, right? Make sure to just play his game and then see how he does and build some more confidence from there, and then make it a hard decision for John Hines on Wednesday or next game. Like, hey, you can trust me, play me. And, it is kind of a show me year for him though, right? A lot of prospects coming next year, and there's a couple roster spots that are open because of the Dewey's getting traded. So, what he does down the stretch here over the summer and then going into camp, like there's not a spot that's just, guaranteed for him in the fall. So whatever he can showcase now will be more important for how he feels about himself in the summertime, and then B, going into next season.
Well, let's not rag the puck anymore. Let's kick it over to Adam. This interview with Adam Beckman is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions, all the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it. It makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, and if you want to take 10% off, use promo code SP10. Getyourwaggleon.com, promo code SP10. Joining the show today is one of us by way of 75th overall pick in the 2019 NHL draft by your Minnesota Wild, Adam Beckman. How are we doing, Adam?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. How about you guys?
Good. And I know Joe mentioned before we even jumped on here, the beautiful, unorthodox weather that we have here for March in Minnesota. So appreciate you taking the time. Going to start with a weirder one that we've been opening with for all of our interview guests. Rorschach test. When you look at the Minnesota Wild logo, what do you see?
Yeah, it's so funny. This took me like literally the day I got drafted here, and like, or maybe the day I came to development camp to find out that it's a bear. But the whole time, my whole life, I mean, there's even like where I grew up, there's like minor hockey teams called the Wild. They're different colors, but it's the same logo. And I thought it was like a UFO for the longest time. I don't know why. Like, I know there's some like exhibition rides like that I used to, when I used to go in it, like it was spun, and it's for some reason it looked like a saucer that, I don't know, it just, to me, it looked like a UFO or something like that. So I always thought that literally until like the day I was at development camp and somebody pointed out on a wall that it's a head, right? And I had absolutely no idea.
Oh man,
UFO is the best answer we've gotten so far, so that's good. Yeah,
far and away the best answer. And you'd love to hear too. Last week when we talked to Declan Chisholm about it, he only saw the bear. He didn't see anything besides the bear. So it's all over the map, man. But yeah, UFO, top answer so far.
It was like this. It looked like it's the sun with the yellow. I don't know, something about it.
It's hard to miss it when you walk in the room or the lounge, and there's like that big, huge logo on the wall, right? If it's on this thing on your sweater,
once you see it, you can't unsee it. I think, like. Once you see that it's the bear, the trees and the river and the Wild, I guess, just that type of thing. It's hard to unsee it, but like until I was told it, I had no idea.
You mentioned growing up and having some Wild teams there. Like, obviously, do you have a rink behind your house? Like, I know your dad got you on the ice, right, when you were like 3 or 4. Like, how did you get started? And I'm sure a game that everybody plays in Saskatoon.
Yeah. So, growing up, like, I lived like literally 2 houses down from my elementary school and 10 houses down from my high school. But behind my elementary school, there's one of the, like the nicest outdoor rinks in the city. Like, there's a group of guys that have taken care of it forever. And they ended up getting a Zamboni, like a little bit into my time, but like, so an awesome outdoor rink. So I spent, a ton of time out there. But, I think when I was like probably 7 or 8, we started flooding one in my backyard. So, from whether it's, probably the beginning of November till, this time, usually there would be an outdoor rink in the backyard that, I'd go out to, whether, at least every single day for, a little bit of time at least. So I think that's, where I developed a lot of, my skill and stuff like that.
And you siblings both played, right? Your sister and your brother
Yeah,
played?
so I had 2 older siblings. My sister played, midget AAA. My brother played a little bit. He didn't play at a super high level, but he played quite a bit as well. So I kind of grew up just, obviously, my brother's 4 years older than me and my sister's 6. So my brother's, age buddies were always like kind of my idols or whatever, right? So I'd be playing, 4 years up all the time, whether it's in the backyard or whatever. So I think that's where I learned a lot as well.
So like a lot of like daily, like big pickup games out there. Like, did you always have the weekend would have the biggest like pickup?
Yeah. So when, like I said, my backyard, so it's called the Spore Court, and I think we put it in when I was 9 or 10. So basically, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's like these tiles that pretty much are just compatible with like, a lot of things, but we obviously used it for hockey, and we put a, hockey net out there, and your stick slides on it, puck slide on it, good. So we would play, pickup hockey all the time, whether it was my brother's friends coming home from school at lunchtime or, just anytime, in the evenings or in the summertime. And then obviously in the wintertime, it was flooded to a rink. So I was pretty lucky.
We ask everybody, I guess, like you grew up in Canada, you grew up in these towns, and you love the game of hockey, and it's your dream. Like, when did you realize, hey, I might have like a future in this? When is it where it became more of a, not say a job, but maybe became more of like, hey, I can take this to the next level?
Yeah, I think, obviously when you're young, everybody's got the dream of it, right? Like you're playing hockey, and whether it's the outdoor rink and you're, pretending you're Sidney Crosby or whoever it is, you have that dream of, playing in the NHL. And I think that, I was always, a pretty good minor hockey player in my city. So obviously just like continuing to try and get better. But I honestly, like, I don't think that, you ever really realize it till like probably my first year junior, when you start talking to NHL teams and you start kind of realizing that, you might have a chance at getting drafted, and then, from there playing in the NHL. But I think that, it's always your dream, but I think that it didn't really become something that I, really thought was possible, just because, there's not a lot of people. I mean, there's a ton of people that play hockey, but not a lot of people that, get to reach the highest level. So probably when I started talking to NHL teams, yeah.
Who are the idols you looked up to? Like, who are the guys? Who are the posters on your wall in your room, for example? Like, who was up
there? Sidney Crosby was a big one for me. Obviously, just with his, just during the time I was growing up, he was just unbelievable, right, and dominating in kind of every aspect of the game. And so I think I always had. He was always a big idol of mine. I think kind of one that probably people wouldn't necessarily, or would be a little bit surprised, is Jordan Eberle. I think that, growing up in Western Canada, and obviously with the World Juniors and stuff, that was still kind of, when I was, probably 10 or 11 or maybe 9 or 10. And obviously Eberle was just dominating the World Juniors. And then he played in the Western Hockey League. Probably it's about 2 hours away from where I am. So, they would come play Saskatoon. And so I'd see him. And then obviously when he went to the NHL, Edmonton's the closest team to where I come from. So he was actually probably one of my bigger idols as well.
Nice. And you talked about some of your junior experience there. Going to Spokane, I've gotten a lot of mixed reviews. Like, people absolutely dog the city. There's other people that say it's a hidden gem. Like, what was your thoughts on your time there?
I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I'd say it's a hidden gem for sure. I think that the weather there is awesome. Like the summertime is unbelievable. There's tons of lakes nearby. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but
oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like 40 minutes up the interstate, and it's beautiful. Spokane, the city, is awesome. Like it's got everything. It's kind of an older downtown, but it's like really pretty. There's a river that comes through, and the fans are unbelievable. The rink's unbelievable. Yeah, I don't know. I've never actually. That's funny you say people with mixed reviews. I've never actually heard anything too bad about it, but I loved it. Like I was, like I said, the weather was great. The fans are great. Restaurants and food's good. So it was awesome. My time there for sure.
Do you have a favorite Go ahead, Scott.
No, you're good.
Do you have a favorite memory in the WHL at all? Like favorite game or like moment that you had during that run you guys had?
Yeah, I think my first year we were in the playoffs. We made the playoffs my first year there. I was 17, and I think we were maybe the third seed in our division, and we played against Portland. Portland had a really good team with just tons of guys. Like Joel Hofer was on that team. I don't know, the goalie for St. Louis, Cody Glass, Seth Jarvis. They had a really good team, and we were good as well. Like, and I think we were playing them I think it was game 4, and we were up 2-1 in the series. We were playing in Portland. Awesome atmosphere, and it went to overtime. So it was, I think it was a pivotal game, and I was fortunate enough to score the overtime winner of that game. And I think that just that kind of that feeling was like, it was so cool. I think that was like one of the bigger moments up to that time in my career. Just being in a almost a sellout massive building that they play out of, and scoring an overtime winner was really cool there, I think.
And 2019-2020 was obviously a great season for you with Spokane. Never a slouch in your time there, but was this more just, hey, cutting your teeth, working your way up the lineup, or was there something that changed going into that season where like something all of a sudden clicked?
I think that a big part of it was just the confidence level. Obviously, coming into your first year, you don't really know what to expect. And then, getting drafted and just, spending some time here at development camp and then, main camp and coming back. And obviously your role is a little bit elevated as you turn 18 now. And, I think that just, that confidence and really just understanding the league, I think, was a big thing as well. And then obviously with our team was really good that year. Like, I think that was the year that got shut down due to COVID, but like we were like dominating the league in our division that year. And I think that just, with the line mates and just our defensive core and everything, it just kind of all clicked for myself at least. And I just felt, like I was, really coming into my own.
You brought up the draft. I talked to your parents last year, and they brought up the story about deciding whether to go to the draft. And do you remember how that was decided, and why was even a discussion whether you wanted to go or not? Yeah,
I think it was we were definitely contemplating it. I think just because I think the biggest thing is you hear stories about people that, like, God forbid something happens where you go and you don't get drafted and you sit there the whole time or whatever. And obviously I felt pretty confident about myself getting drafted, and but you just truly never know. And I think that we contemplated it for a long time, and then being that it was pretty close. It was in Vancouver that year, so we got there. And I mean, looking back on it, it's probably one of the better decisions we've made in a time like that, because the memories I think that come from that are unbelievable. I think that it's kind of obviously it's not a huge part of your career, considering it doesn't really matter when you get drafted, but I think just being there was just so cool, and having the chance to experience it with my family was really cool too.
And your dad flipped a coin. Is that how so how did that moment happen, where you came into the room and just said, hey, we'll let fate decide whether we do it?
Yeah, that's kind of what happened. Like, we were contemplating. My mom and I always hem and haw on everything. Like, it's kind of our personality trait when they're making decisions and stuff like that. And he was finally just like, all right, well, we got to decide. So kind of 50-50 type thing. And that's how it went. So it worked out good.
That's awesome. And when you were at the draft then, like, did you have an idea of where you were going to go? Like you said, it doesn't matter when you get drafted, but were you expecting to go sooner, later? Was it a big surprise?
Again, I think you truly never know, but I think for me, I kind of knew I was in that. I felt like I was going to be in the second to third round range. I think that the draft's unique because you play against players that get drafted, or you don't know guys that are getting drafted, and you're kind of just sitting there thinking, oh, well, maybe I feel like I'm better than that player, or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's the team's, preference and what they like in a player. So you can't really look too far into it. And I think that obviously it's stressful just because you're sitting there and you're obviously contemplating and thinking about what, the worst case scenario is. But once you finally hear your name, it's like, it was just the best feeling. And you just feel so happy and, excited to kind of like put that behind you and get to work, I think.
What do you remember the most about your NHL debut? Like that day, and just, I know your parents were there, but like, it was Denver, right? I think what was that day and like hours leading up to it like?
Yeah. Obviously I think I remember looking around like just into the crowd, and obviously, the atmosphere in that arena is unbelievable. Obviously you're playing against, McKinnon and Ranson and all these guys. I think they ended up winning the Stanley Cup that year, if I'm thinking back correctly. So they were a really good team, but the atmosphere in there was unbelievable. And I remember I was sitting on the bench just during the national anthem, and it was Connor Dewar at the time. He was only probably I think 3 or 4 games into his career at the time, and he just kind of looked at me and kind of said, you're here type thing. And I think that was really cool, right? Like you dream about that moment for so long, and it's almost a little bit surreal in the sense that like you thought about it so much, and then for it to happen, it's really cool. But it just kind of gives you a taste of it and makes you kind of want it more and more, I think.
And talk to us about just being a prospect, right? Like in the purest sense, like you've got to be pretty well acquainted with 35W at this point.
Yeah.
What is it like kind of bouncing back and forth, having to adapt roles, being top 6 down with Iowa, shifting to playing a bottom 6 role in Minnesota?
Yeah, I think that, especially when you're young, there's a lot of, you're doing a lot of travel and, whatever. You don't know exactly if you're hopping on a flight the next day or whatever it is. But I always say it when, I'm talking, and just take it day by day, I think is the biggest thing. I think that, if you're down there, you got to be, working to get better and working on your craft, where, like you said, whether or not you're playing in the top 6 or whatever it is, or what your role is, you just want to get better, whether it's at practice or during the games. I think that we all kind of know our strengths and weaknesses as a player, and what we need to develop. And then obviously you get the opportunity to come up here, you want to just try and make an impact, but help the team, I think, is the biggest thing. Obviously, right now, it's kind of crunch time, and the team's playing some pretty meaningful games. So if you get an opportunity to play, you want to try and just contribute to as the best you can. So I think at the end of the day, it's day by day, and just trying to focus as much as you can on getting better, because that's kind of all you can do.
Mm-hmm. Is it a little more stressful, like in your first experiences with it when you're younger, in terms of like waiting for a call up or seeing somebody else called up, or just getting anxious about it, versus maybe now you have a little more experience with it being up and down, in terms of maybe would things stress you out maybe more a little earlier on, a couple of years ago, versus like kind of right now going through it?
Yeah, I think obviously, I think as you mature, like in the 2 3/4 or 3 years of pro hockey I've played, I think that I've matured a lot on just like the mental aspect of that, and not reading into that stuff and not worrying about that, because I mean, it doesn't really get you anywhere. I think the biggest thing the biggest difference is when you're young. Like when I was young and you get called up, you're obviously really nervous, and like obviously nervous about playing, but just nervous about being in the locker room, right? And the atmosphere. I think it's just now being where I am, I think you're a lot more comfortable. Obviously at that time too, the group was awesome and making you feel comfortable, but I think just that confidence in yourself, as well as the atmosphere in the room, really helps make you feel better, because I think at the end of the day, it is hockey, and at this level we're all kind of know how to play the game. But that being said, I think just like making yourself feel comfortable and confidence, the biggest thing.
Last year at the X, you did score a goal at home. I know there was an offside challenge there. What was that moment like when the goal went in initially? The kind of that overall feeling. I'm sure it was tough to see it taken away, but that whole moment, the whole place went nuts and everything like that. Just what was that?
Yeah,
moment like?
I would say it's a really cool feeling. I think that, you know, when you think you scored, you know, obviously it's kind of a big adrenaline rush. I think that you obviously dream of that, right? Like I said, that's kind of one of those moments you dream about as a kid. And then obviously it gets taken away, and that's just, you know, the way it goes sometimes. I think that it happens so much, you know, now. I think you just watch hockey games. It seems like there's one coming back once every 2 games or whatever it is. But I think, you know, just that feeling kind of gives you the hunger, or, you know, or the drive to try and, you know, make it happen, I guess, again, for real.
Did Ryan Hartman like take you to dinner after that, or did he do anything like say sorry kid, or like anything that, you know, I think he was the guy that was offside on that play. I believe it was him.
Yeah, he did. He just he obviously, like, again, that's hockey. I think he said it actually happened to him too when you know, he was, you know, beginning his career, but he obviously was just like, what are you gonna do? I think he ended up scoring like the next 2 goals and scoring the game winner. So I think he made up for it. So yeah,
That definitely helps.
yeah.
Talk to me back to Iowa. What's it like playing for Tim Army versus playing for Brett McLean?
Yeah, I think obviously, you know, both are obviously really good coaches. You know, coming in when I was young, I think that it was kind of like not a shock, but it was just like, this is pro hockey, right? Like, it's intense, and it was rigorous, right? Like they put you through, you know, tons of practices, lots of video, and I think it was really good for me because it kind of just like instilled a lot of, you know, different things into my game that I feel like, you know, to this day I still think about, right? Like you become super aware of the way you're playing, like, so to speak. Like you I don't know if the word is analyze, but like just critique your own game, right? Like you're like, okay, I got to do these things, right? Like these little things, like, you know, they're not worried, like you score this and that, but they're also worried about, you know, you making that play on the wall, or you making sure you're making the right decision, stuff like that. And it was, you know, I think my first 2 years, it was really like, not so much my second year, but my first year was a little bit of a rude awakening coming into pro, right? Like you gotta really worry about those things, and like, you know, like change those things in your game, because if you want to play at the next level, you got to be tight in all areas. So I think it was really good for me to just learn that style of game. And then obviously with Mac down there now, it's really good. It's super positive as well. And, you know, I think we're continuing to work through the kinks in my game. I think that obviously just trying to bring it every day is the, you know, the big thing from both coaches is just trying to be consistent with that. You know, I'd bring it, like, we're at practice, we're going to try and work, and we're going to get better, right? And I think that that's a value that both of them have kind of instilled in me. But yeah, with Mac now, I think it's just that, you know, bringing that energy and positivity in terms of, you know, we want to have fun, but we want to, you know, get down to work too. So yeah.
For sure. And I have to get you to either confirm or deny a story here. It's something that's actually grown into a big bit on another one of our podcasts, Judd's Buds, where we talk wild prospects and NHL draft eligibles.
Yeah.
A couple summers back, Russo has Tim Army on his podcast and asked him, hey, what do you tell a guy like Beckman to do over the summer? And his answer was, told him to go shoot pucks in his driveway.
Yeah. I think that happened. Like when I had my exit meeting after my first year, I think I had like it was something insane. It was like 200 and some shots for the year, and it was like amongst the like top 5 in the league for shots on goal. But I had like 10 or 11 goals, which is obviously not a great shooting percentage. So yeah, we talked. I remember we talked, and he just said, "Listen, like you're getting the looks. Like obviously, you know, you've got a really good shot. Like I think that I've always worked on my shot, right? I've had a really good shot, you know, kind of throughout my life. But it's more so now. It's like, okay, you got to figure out ways to get it off and be accurate with it when you're getting it off quick or whatever. And so, like I said, we have that thing in my backyard, and I put a big emphasis on just like making my release different or quicker and putting it in spots quick. And I think to this day, like I still am trying to work on that, right? Like I think that's a big thing for me is, when you get the opportunity, you're not going to get as many, at this level. So you got to try and make the most of it if you do. But yeah, it was kind of just like, it wasn't so much like you need to be shooting, but it's like how you're shooting, right? Like you need to work on your release and stuff like that. And I think it really helped me because I spent a lot of time that summer just working in different areas. And then I think I took a step the next season.
What's the biggest adjustment? Like you've been a goal scorer your whole life, and like at the NHL, obviously we know it's faster and guys are stronger. But like, what's been the biggest thing you've learned in trying to be, productive at this level in terms of why it's kind of a challenge for a lot of guys, not just yourself, but a lot of guys who come up and have that go from the AHL to NHL and try to see if they can have that kind of production?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it is maybe just like not so much confidence, but like experience, right? Like I think, once you kind of start to get it in a groove, I think at any level, like once you start to feel comfortable and, feel like you can do it, I think is a big thing. But yeah, I think that just getting the looks, right? Like you're going to get less and less looks when the defensemen are, twice as fast or their sticks are way better, right? Like you got to make the most of your opportunity and try and just put yourself in the best position, because I think the biggest difference between the American League and the NHL in terms of like skill set is just like little things like sticks, right? Like, in the American League, you might be able to, shoot through a defenseman screen or whatever. But a lot of times, these guys give you it and then they put their stick on it late. Like it's in the American League, a lot of guys are learning, whereas here it's like guys are kind of more masters of their skill, right? So just trying to, again, learn the little things. But I think for me, a big thing is trying to get the puck off quick and put it in the spot that I need to put it.
Nice. I was curious, like, a veteran player can go like 20 games without a goal and he's still in the lineup and he's still getting chances and he's still going to be able to, go back out there. When you're a prospect and you're maybe up for injury purposes or whatever, you might have 2 or 3 games or whatever. It's not a long runway, I guess, of chances to do that. You mentioned getting looks. Like, is there what is that feeling as a prospect of, you probably have a few games while a guy's coming back from an injury, or like, I don't know if there's more pressure or if there's more like you want to make an impact every single shift you're out there no matter what. But like, what is that kind of feeling like? You're not gonna be able to score every game. Of course, that's not the way the world works. But
yeah,
is there a certain feeling about that?
I mean, a little bit. I think obviously for any player, the biggest thing you want to do is produce, right? Like especially for an offensive player, you want to produce at this level. So obviously you come in and when you say you want to make an impact, that's a big part of it, right? You want to make an impact, help the team win, and by doing that, you got to obviously make the right plays at the blue lines and protect the puck, but you also got to produce. So I think that there is a little bit of pressure on that, but I think at the same time, you can't force it, right? Like stuff like that just kind of happens. Like obviously, I've played at I played a lot of hockey in my life, and I know that if you're playing the right way, good things tend to happen. So I think that for me, it's just try to play the right way, and hope, like you say, good things happen, and hopefully happen sooner rather than later, I guess.
For sure. Another NHL trade deadline has come and gone, and by way of Pat Maroon heading out of the organization, we got a former Spokane teammate of yours, Luke Toporowski, which maybe I butchered that last name. Who knows?
That was actually correct. Yeah.
Nailed it. Here we go. Coming to join the team. Curious what you can tell us just about Luke as a player and as a person, but also any advice you gave him, whether it's about the organization or best spots to grab beer in Des Moines. Go wherever you want with it. Yeah.
So Luke's actually one of my really good buddies from junior. So we're the same age, and my whole time I was there, he was there. So it's actually really when I found out, I was kind of I almost was laughing. It didn't feel kind of real because it's a little bit weird because I just didn't expect that. So I'm super excited. Obviously, he's doing really well to start in Iowa right now, and he's a really good player. He's really fast and strong. He's pretty tenacious too. He's got a really good skill set. He's actually from the Quad Cities. He played a ton of minor hockey in Chicago, so he's really familiar with, I think, the Midwest, and then obviously being in Iowa, I think it's really cool because, you know, I've been talking to him. I talked to him before as well, like all the time. And then obviously now that he's in Iowa, just kind of helping him out in terms of like you said, where to eat, where he's living, you know, where he's at. And actually, little tidbit, his brother is the assistant coach of the Des Moines Buccaneers. So, so his brother's there in the town right now as well. So I think it's, you know, it was a pretty good move for him in terms of just, you know, the proximity to, you know, where he grew up, as well as, you know, his brother's living there right now. So super excited for him, and, you know, super excited to kind of be on the journey with him as well.
Nice.
As of this taping, Khusnutdinov will go on his first NHL road trip this weekend. And for somebody who's been in the minors and obviously in the NHL, what are your favorite perks about NHL life, NHL travel? Like the biggest differences you see both in travel and at the X, right? Like the lounge and all that stuff like that people don't get to see.
Yeah, obviously, I think the Tria facility and then the X facility is obviously second to none. Like, it's unbelievable. Just the meals, the chefs there do an unbelievable job of, you know, taking care of your needs, but just the entire training staff. It's really good. It's unbelievable in Iowa as well. I think that you know, the training staff down there does an unbelievable job of taking care of the boys. And obviously up here, it's just, you know, bigger facility, right? Like, there's just more and more for you to be able to, you know, access. But I think the biggest thing, the difference, is the travel. And just, you know, instead of hopping on a bus to Grand Rapids for 7.5 hours, or you're flying to the West Coast, but you're, you know, making a couple connecting flights. It's a lot different than hopping on a private plane and, you know, being there in a couple hours. So, like I said earlier, I think that, you know, there's a ton of, you know, perks of playing in here. And I think that that's what just gives you the more of the drive to, you know, want to stay here. And obviously I'm not entirely sure what the KHL is like in terms of, you know, accommodations like that, but I'm sure he's, you know, pretty excited about, you know, like you said, the road trip and just being here. Cause, you know, obviously I'm sit beside him and, at the Tria the last couple of days, and, you know, he's an awesome kid. So he seems like he's having a good time. So excited for him.
You probably learned pretty quickly that it's called the Never Hungry League, NHL, on the airplanes, by tell how much food that they give you on there, like your favorite snacks, snacks you pick up on the way, you know.
Yeah, that's what they call it, the Never Hungry League. But, you know, when you're in a guy like me, I think it just makes you more hungry to try and, like you said, stay there and make it an opportunity to, you know, make a career out of it, I think.
I think we have. What do you do off the ice? Are you you go back home? Do you fish? Do you obviously golfing is, I think, every hockey player. I don't think I've met a hockey player. Very few. Maybe Kirill said he's still figuring out golf, but very few don't golf. So, like, what are your go-to off the ice things?
Yeah, golf's obviously a big one. I'm actually not good at all, but I love it. Like, it's just such a nice thing to do when you finish working out or skating or whatever. You kind of keep that same, you know, hanging out with your buddies that you're with during the gym or whatever, even if it's your buddies that don't play hockey. I think that it's just such a good sport to kind of just kind of chill, but, you know, be competitive. But yeah, like people always ask me, it's like, I don't play video games. I like to read a bit. I'm a big, I like conversation, going out for coffee and just like hanging out with guys. I think that's something that in Iowa we do quite a bit, is just like I said, going out for coffee and stuff like that, because you know, the days can get long if you're not playing video games or you're not being able to golf, I guess.
Nice. Well, let's wrap on that then. Our final question here, the Waggle Golf question. GetYourWaggleOn.com. Promo code SP10 for 10% off. If you were to assemble your dream golf foursome to be a part of, I need to lay that caveat out because we've had 2 people already write themselves out of their own golf foursome. Who would be in that group? And bonus points if you've got a course that you'd want to play to.
So when you say that, it can be anybody?
Anybody you can conjure.
Oof. Not hockey player, could be golfers, could be dead or alive, could be whatever, you know, you can.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like saying mom, dad, and brother would probably not be the greatest answer. But that's what you're about.
Go that far. All right. I mean, I think you have to put Tiger Woods in there. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm probably going to put Roger Federer in there. And who would my third be? Jeez. Go Michael Phelps, and I'd go Augusta.
Ooh.
Okay.
Who are you sharing the cart with?
I mean, I pretty much, I guess, just like the best 3 athletes of all time. But
there you go.
High level, yeah. Who are you riding the cart with then?
I'm probably riding the cart with Tiger. Hopefully get some swing tips.
Good answers across the board.
Right on.
I think you hit on the head when you said I'm not good, but I like it. I think you're one of us in that respect too. I think all of us are like not good at golf, but really enjoy going out there.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost a humbling experience, but a fun experience. No
exactly.
doubt.
Yeah. That's the best way to describe it.
It puts you in the realistic minority too, because most people will tell you that they're good when really they're just not.
Yeah.
Like a couple guys on each team that are a stick. Like obviously we've seen what Boldy does in the off season, but more often than not, you got guys like, oh yeah, I'm a really good golfer. And it's like, oh,
you see him.
Not really.
Yeah. 100%. I think golf is like one of the funniest sports in terms of like analyzing your game, because you can't truly see if a guy's a good golfer until you play with him. Like I know guys that were reliable, or it's like, oh yeah, I shot 78 today, but I didn't take a stroke when I lost my ball, and you know what I mean. Like everybody plays it differently, so you never really truly know how good a golfer is until you play with him.
A lot of breakfast balls and foot wedges, and those,
exactly,
those games,
yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Adam, for doing this, especially on an off day for you guys. Well deserved, and really enjoy getting to know you a little bit better in your path here, and looking forward to catching you at the rink tomorrow.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
What a beauty. Adam Beckman, folks. Great interview, obviously. I personally, of course, just love that he actually addressed the shooting pucks in the driveway. I know that's one of Twitter's favorite topics. So now you have your answer, folks. But let's kick off our new segment here. Keyboard Warriors, brought to you by our good friends, Barrel Theory Beer Company. You can check them out, obviously, down the road on East 7th, basically walking equidistant to them as you would to, say, a Tom Reed's or a Bad Weather on the other side of town. Great for pregame or postgame. And once you get to the rink, you can check them out on the main level, sections 105, 106 for their Crowler of the Day. It's my first stop whenever I go to a game. You can also get their Raindrops IPA on tap right around section 112 there at the burger stands. And they have various locations throughout the club and 200 levels. I'm most of the way done with my early access here. A delicious hazy IPA. And actually, it's a little bit covered up by their standard label branding, but basically got the Nike swoosh going on here. Just beautiful craftsmanship. And I know, Joe, we're almost through Lent. I'm really sorry for rubbing this delicious IPA in your face. But again, Keyboard Warriors here. This is our new weekly hot take segment, which really we're counting on all of you to give us submissions. Whether you have hot takes yourself, if you see someone make an interesting post on Twitter and you want to tag it in the comments below each post, great, we'll take it. This week we actually had some good submissions, Joe, and I know we're not going to run through all of them. Some of them are good enough that they're going to be banked for next week. But let's hit one, I think at least hit one that's completely off the hockey sphere, one that maybe is more Minnesota or Gopher focused, maybe one of each. Yeah. So shout out to everyone that commented, especially Better Dead Than Red. It's a shot at Wisconsin. We love it, Jeremy. And Sean Cosgrove. Both of them were going crazy in the comments. We'll lead here with Drew Cove, who Gopher insider himself. He's got a double for us. One of them that stays with the Wild, and one of them that goes more the film and nerditch direction. First one, Minnesota Wild's biggest rival is Winnipeg and is not Chicago. Rivalries need to be reciprocated by fan bases and achieve back and forth results. Chicago has dominated Minnesota in big time moments. We'll lead with that first. What are your thoughts, Joe?
I mean, historically, yeah, they had a lot more, battles in the early rounds of the playoffs back when the Blackhawks were in their quote pre-dynasty era there. So if we're going like right now, like which this team has the most like animosity, I think, from the Wild. I know Winnipeg has fed that too with the way that they played in games, like Perfetti Hartman thing. Like every game they play in Winnipeg, it seems like Kirill gets injured. So Winnipeg is right up there. Don't discount the Blues though. Like I just think that the Blues have the playoff, a little bit of history with the Wild, and also it seems like every game there's some fight, there's some bad scrum, there's something going on. I'd have to be like the division teams like that would be up there for me. Chicago, like now they're in the rebuild. Like none of those guys that were the rivals for them like before are really with the lineup anymore. So I think just geography in the division, it's going to naturally get there again. But I think right now it's probably Winnipeg or St. Louis, because they'd be Dallas, but Dallas obviously has their number, and so hasn't really been kind of reciprocated rivalry. But I'll shoot in there.
Yeah, I think the level of physicality with the Winnipeg matchups has always been there. And I'm with Drew that, like, sure, Chicago's kind of been a rival, but it's never really been competitive when the teams are both going for, whether it's in the playoffs or working towards the playoffs, and strong seasons for both teams. Like, they've had our number, and they had a really good team for a stretch there. So obviously that's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting with them on the rise now, bringing in guys like Bedard, who knows, maybe Celebrini, Oliver Moore, Frank Nazar. Like, they are on the rise, and it's going to be interesting to see that collide with Bill Guerin getting $15 million magically that he can start spending. So maybe that'll be a renewed rivalry. We'll see. Second piece for Drew Cove. The Phantom Menace is actually a great film. That is one of my favorite chirps with Star Wars fans. On top of, I always will say Star Trek instead of Star Wars, just to get the nerd reaction. Like, people will get triggered very easily by calling it the wrong thing. And I'll bring up Phantom Menace being incredible because it's their least favorite. They all hate Jar Jar Binks. And I personally actually do like it because I think Darth Maul is just the coolest character that Star Wars has ever produced.
Yeah, I'll let you handle that one. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, so I would not want to get myself on the wrong end of big fans who are like, to take me out for not giving the right critique on that one. But I have seen all the movies. It's just been such a long time. I wouldn't want to give a Siskel and Ebert reaction to that one. The Game of Thrones question was better, but yeah.
Okay, we can hit that. And this coming from Isha, Game of Thrones is worse than Walking Dead, and both are horrendous. At least Walking Dead had tremendous books. Game of Thrones books were almost as garbage as the disgrace of a fantasy story that was Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones is one of my favorite shows I've ever seen. So
yeah, I fight East on this all the time. He's an idiot.
Like, yeah, it may not be for you, or may not be for each individual person, like the way it's presented. But I thought it was, my wife and I were glued to our TV every time it came out again. So I'd be a voiceful disagreement in that one.
Well, we got House of the Dragon coming this summer. And to be honest, the first season of that, I didn't even particularly enjoy. I'm still hooked, and I'm going to watch and see where it develops. Game of Thrones, if you want to bash the final season, I'll stand out of your way. Like, they wrapped it up horribly. They tried to go through it as quickly as possible in a callback here to Drew Cove because they wanted to get out and go do the next Star Wars trilogy. And oh, weird, they ended up getting the boot because of how awful that conclusion to Game of Thrones was. But the rest of the way, I thought it was incredible. And it's funny too, because like Lord of the Rings, sure, like I can see people like leaning in and saying that that's a nerd itch. Game of Thrones was basically the merging of worlds between nerds and non-nerds all loving the same show. Like, I don't think that Game of Thrones, the series, is nerdy at all. Reading the books, sure, you can label it that, but I just, like, there was no one besides Isha that pointed at Game of Thrones and said, this is bad.
Yeah, that one was, I mean, Isha, feel bad if you didn't like it, but I'd still rewatch that series. I'd still, at some point, give it some time, but maybe sad with the ending. But everything else was great about it.
Yeah. Now, Jeremy, we're actually going to hit on your Gopher comment next week because I actually think it's a really interesting one to talk about, but it'll align better with the interview we're hopefully banking this week with the Middlestat brothers. That's right, the two that are still at the University of Minnesota. But one that we'll throw in here as well. This one is very topical for Minnesota Wild Twitter in general, coming from Mateo. The NMCs handed out before the year don't actually matter that much. They are all solid players making fair or even bargain AAV. And if they were traded, you would be going back out into free agency for similar players. That is very controversial among the general fan base on Twitter. What say you?
Was that Bill Guerin's ghost account? Yeah,
one of Guerin's like 12 burners.
It sounds exactly like kind of what he said before. Like, he signed them because A, they're good players. B, if you get rid of Marcus Foligno, you have to go out and try to replace him. Which in some instances is accurate. I think there's still value to Marcus Foligno. I just didn't see the rush to sign him to 4x4 in September. Like, that's all. Like, I mean, I think you could make an argument to re-sign him like this summer, or this end of the year. Like, I think he's a valuable player. He's a valuable leader on a team that doesn't have a lot of vocal voices. Like, you worry about his longevity, like as far as his injuries, because he plays that hard game. And I thought, going into the year, like you look at the last couple of years, Zuccarello is an awful contract, for a couple more years. And you thought aligning him with Kaprizov, A, they play well together historically. B, keep your superstar happy, and you still need to, not like there's like a plethora of options of guys that they've been throwing up in the top six there alongside Kaprizov. So, I mean, and for me, like, I'll continue to say this until I'm blue in the face. It wasn't the who, it was the when. It wasn't the who they signed. It was the when they signed them and the options that they took away from themselves at the deadline when you saw players, maybe even lesser players, getting very good draft capital at the deadline for it. But, but they're right in the sense that, like, there's a prospect ready to step in to play Ryan Hartman's role or ready to play, Zuccarello's role. They don't, this team doesn't have a lot of secondary scoring as it is, right? So, and I don't know who'd be available in free agency to replace them if they wanted to, but
sure,
the Wild are not. We repeat, they are not in a rebuild. They never have been in a rebuild. So, and that's Jaron's point too. They're in a rebuild.
In their existence, they've never been in a rebuild.
Never said the word rebuild. So all those factors play in. Again, and I don't think these are bad players. I don't think, I think that maybe it's a year or two long for Foligno as far as his contract, but it's more so just the when, why be in such a hurry, let the year play out and see how it goes. But, this is where they are, and this is the core that he believes in. And if they reward him, it'd be a heck of a story, right? Bill Guerin sticking to his guns and like, hey, regardless of what everybody else says and rips me, like, these are the guys I believe in, and they eventually took us to where we wanted to be. So that would be a story that writes itself.
Yeah, and for me, it's partially, like you said, the timing is huge. Like, I don't know why we were in a rush, especially with all three. I think most fans, if they had signed one or two of those deals, pick out of a hat, I don't care which one or two, people probably aren't reacting the same way. But like you said, you're strapped to the deadline. You really don't have any chips to move in a year where you probably would have liked to, regardless of what they'll say publicly about chasing the playoffs right now. They would have loved to get some assets for something, right? And for Foligno, like you said, maybe a year or two too long, maybe a little bit more on the AAV than they'd like if you want to go 4 years. But the no movement clauses for all three guys, it's done a lot to trigger fans and think, oh gosh, is this going to be the country club again? Like, get these older players that like playing in Minnesota and basically lock them in so they're not leaving unless they want to. I gotta wonder though, especially, I mean, even if you remove the injury, but we won't, there's no way that if Bill Guerin is extending Marcus Foligno today, he's giving him a 4x4.
Yeah, well, I just don't know. I mean, is he getting that in open market, right? Is he getting that? I don't know if he is. This year has been obviously tough for him with his injuries and stuff like that, and then the production hasn't been there. If it's like a 15, 20 goal scorer and your guy plays at that size and level, then hey, like those guys are hard to find, right? Again, like this will be a topic that'll be talked about for forever, it seems like. But like the hot take said, it's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's not. There's some issues with the timing of it that led to some inflexibility at the deadline, and now you're kind of going to be with the same group for several years now because no one's going anywhere.
Yep, that is a fact. All right, we've got a couple from Cosgrove and Jeremy that we will be carrying over to next week. But again, thank you all for chiming in. We're going to keep this rolling in the future, and once there become even more comments, we're definitely going to have to be more selective on which ones we talk through. But I don't know, good first swing here for Barrel Theory's Keyboard Warrior segment.
Yeah, so far so good, and maybe we'll try to do some quick hit ones so we kind of can keep it moving along. There's a lot of interesting topics. We'll get to a couple of them, and maybe not. I won't talk so long about it. So
no, it's okay. Talk away. But maybe we wrap here then. Obviously, everyone needs to be checking out some of the recent and upcoming stories on The Athletic. $1 per month, people. That's $12 for a year of the best coverage you're going to get, not just in hockey, not just in the Minnesota market, where we have two of the best writers for The Athletic, somehow all writing for you, but across sports, football, basketball, baseball, doesn't matter. $12 is nothing. That is like a Chipotle burrito with chips and guac. I think you can afford that. I think that's reasonable. And
hopefully we're giving you enough reason to subscribe and re-up, because we have a lot of really good stuff coming, either with Russo from the GM meetings, me from the road trip, a lot of roster analysis going into the offseason if there is no playoffs. We'll have some Brock Faber stories coming to you next week as well. I'm sure you'll be curious about those. Prospect stuff. You wanted more prospect things. You said that in your survey like a year ago, and I got some Riley Height feature coming too in the near future. So a lot of stuff. I'm going to Iowa next week to do some stuff on the prospects and the program there, and catch up with Wallstedt. So a lot of things to look forward to for that $1 a month for 12 months. And not sure how long it's going to be going for. So take advantage of it now, and then you'll enjoy playoff coverage from there.
Act quickly. It's not going to be there forever. I think that's it then, Joe. Is there anything else you wanted to cover here before we sign off?
No, it's obviously a big stretch of games here. So the time we record next week's podcast could look a lot different, but obviously, considering where this team started the season to be actually playing meaningful games in March and going into April is pretty surprising, I think. So at least fans, at least in our comment section, have been really engaged. So keep it coming, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Beautiful. And check out, we've got now our own podcast feed. That's right. We'll still live on with the Soda Pod feed if those of you take in all of our content across the other shows. But this week we'll be sharing the new link to Fellowship of the Rink specifically. So make sure you subscribe, give us 5 stars to bump the channel, and get the latest from us every week. And anyone that hasn't gone and subscribed to the SodaPod YouTube channel yet, again, I don't know what more I can tell you between full podcast video recordings, getting clips from some of these great interviews we've been banking, and Spoke Z coming up here. We've already got some great prospect highlight reels. Next 2 that are in queue are going to be Liam Ogren and Jesper Wallstedt. So make sure you're subscribed so you know the second that those are dropping. But Joe, I don't know, we're baby steps. We got through episode 5. We've got our own channel now. We finally got the segment up and running for Keyboard Warriors, and you dropped your first Lord of the Rings quote. It's all coming together.
We got the logo, so the logo's there, and so we're thanks to lovely bride for putting that together. So it looks sharp, and we'll keep adding to it as we go along. So
beautiful. Well, thank you. Shout out again, Waggle Golf and Barrel Theory Beer Company. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in to yet another episode of Fellowship of the Rink. You stay classy. State of hockey.